Hello and welcome to episode number 3 of the Creative Entrepreneur Podcast Show. Still working on the name. I'm Reagan Ram.
And I'm Haley Ram.
And today we're going to talk about how you can write and publish a book that you know will sell. So have you ever been working on your novel and maybe you're starting to doubt whether or not it's worth it completing because you don't know, is anyone really going to buy this book? Is anyone actually going to read it? Well, that's what we are going to talk about today. And so we're also introducing a new segment to this show, which I didn't tell Haley about. I just thought about 5 minutes before. And that is Book of the Day. So we're going to talk about a book of the day. And that book of the day for this week, or I guess it's a book of the week, is Write to Market by Chris Fox. And so we're actually going to be talking more about this book today. That's kind of been what kind of created the idea for this episode. And so this book basically walks you through how you can deliver a book that you know will sell. So that's a really great book. If you want to get a copy for yourself, you can go through our affiliate link, which is kingdompen.org/write-to-market. So if you pick up that book, we'll earn a small commission at no extra cost to you. So this is a really great book. It really dives in from an indie author who's actually doing really well for himself, making multiple six figures through publishing fiction books. He walks through how you can create a book that you know is going to sell. You want to, as the title of the book says, you want to write a book to a specific market of readers. And so that's what we're going to be talking more about as we go on today.
I was going to say that's a really good book. That's a really good book to have as the book of the week, considering our, what we'll be talking about. And I like the book because he gives actual exercises for you to go do in each chapter. So it's basically teaching you how to do this stuff. So you're not just like, okay, yeah, I read about it, but then how do I do it? So he gives very actionable, practical steps to take. And so you can learn this skill yourself.
Right, he does that in all his books. He has a whole series on growing an indie author career that's really good. Really recommend his books.
All his books are amazing.
Mm-hmm.
His books are amazing.
All right. With that being said, we're going to now move on to the tip of the day. Haley, what is
I knew about?
What?
Yes, I said this one I knew about.
Yeah. So what is the tip of the day?
So the tip of the
week. We were doing daily.
Tip of the week. Yeah, this is not a daily show. This is not a daily show. This is a weekly show. So the tip of the week is to never, this is considered the big no-no in fiction writing, and that is to never ever, unless very, very rarely, but don't do it. Don't do it now unless you're experienced. Never write a coincidence in your novel. Everything must have a purpose. Everything serves a purpose. If it doesn't, it's going to let your reader down. And I mean, we always, as a reader, we're always looking for the connections. It's if you're reading mystery, looking for the little detail that can, is like, oh, well, how does this fit into this? So, and if it doesn't, then you're disappointed. So,
yeah. So, yeah, you can't ever just help your character out by some coincidence happens that kind of moves them along, because the reader is just going to feel like, oh, that's cheating, or like that would never happen. That's not realistic. And so it definitely takes the reader out of the story, which is not what you want. You want to keep them immersed in the story, and you want to be invisible as the author. And so don't use coincidences. That's the tip of the week. All right. So now we'll get into the main content of this episode, which is how to write a book that you know will sell. So we have basically 3 steps for doing this. So we've been doing a lot of research on this ourselves since we just finished the first draft of our first novel that we're going to publish. I know, Haley, you've written first drafts of how many books?
10. I wanted to clarify, we have said this before that we had completed our first draft, but we went back and
I guess you would say it's our second draft.
this is kind of our second draft. We shifted things around and we changed things up. So we had to rework.
Rewrite some chapters, yeah. So.
Yeah, actually quite a bit of chapters. So, because I was thinking about that, I'm like, we already said that we finished our first draft. This is confusing. But yeah, that's the little explanation there. We reworked it, so.
So anyway, so yeah, we've written 13 books between us, but we've never actually published a book before. So this is our first book that we're actually going to publish. We're committed to publishing it and finished our first quasi second draft. And so we've been doing a lot of research. We've been talking to indie authors, a couple, we've been reading Chris Fox and what he says. We've talked to Barbara Hartzler and Rami Vance, two successful indie authors as well, about what they recommend for how do you publish a book that will sell. And so there's 3 steps that we've kind of found, 3 commonalities, 3 patterns for how you can write a book that is going to sell. And so number 1 is to
write to market.
Write to market. So there's kind of 2 types of readers out there. So there's the vast majority of readers, which are people that are casual readers. They might read 1 book a year, maybe 2 books a year, and they'll read, all the big books that you've heard about. They'll read Harry Potter or something, or maybe they'll pick up Hunger Games or whatever the latest fad is. Obviously, those are old examples, but those people aren't the type of readers that you want to write your books for. All right, you want to write to what are called genre readers, which are people that are fanatic readers. They love reading and they tend to stick within one genre, or they'll read one genre at a time before moving on to the next genre. And Ember is nodding, so it's true. And so that's what you want to do. That's what writing to market means. You find a specific niche or market of readers, and you want to write a book that satisfies them. So that brings up the question: how do you do that? How do you write a book that is going to satisfy a particular market of readers?
So how you do that is yes.
I'm setting you up there.
Yes, I recognize that. So you go and do an exercise, what's called finding your tier 1s. And so this is basically going and finding other people within your genre who have up to, 7, who have at least 7 tropes.
Yeah. Share 7.
Yeah, share 7 tropes. 7 or more tropes with your novel, and then make sure they're indie authors, and read
so you're comparing apples to apples versus apples to oranges.
Yes, versus traditional publishing.
You look for an indie artist, and also that they can't be. You want them to be too big, too highly ranked. So like under 4,000, I think is what they said.
What is that number under 4,000 specifically?
So that's the total rank on the Amazon rankings, book rankings. So you'll see on the Amazon page what its ranking is. So is it the number 1 overall book in the entire Amazon platform, all the way through the tens of thousands of books out there? You want to be below 4,000 at the very least.
Yes. So then you'll kind of want to, look at their, read their first chapter, get the inside look, and kind of figure that out. And if you're not sure what your genre is, then just actually go read books that you think are in your genre, and find the tropes, and then make sure your book has that. And then you can also look at the readers also bought section. That's kind of like a quick thing, and look at those, study what. Again, do the same, look at the 4,000 or look for the 4,000 thing. What else? What else is it?
Yeah. So you want to find a book that's kind of the hardest part, is in the beginning, finding a book that is, in the same genre, or same, micro genre, whatever you want to say, the same market that you're wanting to write to. And then you look at, what's the description, of the book, the cover, genre, and usually you can look inside and read the first chapter, and so you can use all that to get a good idea of, is this book similar to what I'm writing? And if it is, then you can go from there and you can look at the bottom, you can see also bought. So those will show books that are similar that the same readers also bought, and you'll know that those are your tier ones. If they, you'll want to investigate those as well and see what like common tropes do they all share. So like a trope would be like the chosen one, or having to go on a quest, right? You can think of different book quotes that tend to show up in different stories, or like in military science fiction, oftentimes you'll have like the maverick commander, and he has to go up against overwhelming odds. A lot of times the military higher ups are incompetent, or they're on an old decrepit spaceship or something. So those are like some tropes of military sci-fi. And so,
of course, in your romance, you have the love triangle. That's a common trope.
Yeah. So that's another. Yeah. So that's kind of what we're talking about when we say tropes. And so you want to find books that are share 7 or more tropes that you have, and you want to use those as kind of your guide. That's the market that you want to write to. And if you're missing tropes, then be sure to include those in your books that it's going to sell with that audience.
Yes.
And so that's pretty much it for step 1 then. So instead of create a banner, always forget to create banners. So step 1 is to write to market. All right, so that takes us to step 2. What is step 2?
Step 2 is write a great book.
What? Write that down, everyone.
Simple as that. Yeah, that's not simple.
Brilliant. Did not see that coming. So, how do you write a great book? Someone should create a website about that. So yeah, obviously, that's the question. How do you write a great book? And that's what kingdompen.org is all about. It's all about teaching you how to write a great book. But it really comes down to 2 things, and maybe even more so 1 thing. And the 2 things are having great characters and having a great plot. And what really sticks with people, and what keeps people coming back and to read more books in your series are the characters. So those are kind of the 2 major things, and then you have other things that are on the kind of periphery of those main things, like prose and description, and making sure you follow the proper story structure with the characteristic moment, inciting incident, and the new world, and the midpoint, and the blackest moment, and the climax, and all that. And that's all stuff we talk about on Kingdom Pen, and we could probably do a lot of different shows on story structure and all that. And in future episodes, I know we have other episodes on this channel too that talk about that. But obviously, you have to not only have all the correct tropes and aesthetics and everything to fit within a particular market, but you also just have to write a good book too. So, and that comes just with practice and writing a lot and reading a lot. So definitely make sure that you have that unbreakable writing habit created, so that you're writing every day. And if you need help with that, creating those habits, definitely go to kingdompen.org, and on that page you can sign up for our how to become an unstoppable writer and form an unbreakable writing habit. And that's really going to help you become the kind of person who writes great books. So definitely grab that.
Yeah, I would definitely say reading great books is another, that's very important. Because I have noticed that in times past, and this is probably because I haven't found my voice yet, I tend to write in the same style of the book that I'm reading to some extent. So
here's a question though. Can you listen to books? Is that the same thing as reading them?
I think that counts. I think that definitely counts.
As long as
you're still as long as you're still actively engaging the content that your brain is processing, and you're thinking, okay, so what makes this book great? You're actively thinking about it. I think it definitely counts, because that's the point of reading a book, right? Or even listening to a book.
Right. So yeah, let us know in the comments, what do you think? Can listening to an audiobook also count as reading and learning how to write great fiction? All right, so then that moves us on to step number 3 in making sure that you are going to be publishing a book that you know will sell, and that is a professional and strategic book cover. So that strategic part, I think, is something that we haven't thought about before, and probably most indie authors haven't thought about before, and that's something we learned, again, from Rami Vance. And so what does this mean? So everyone says, don't judge a book by its cover, but that is the first impression anyone receives of your book. So everyone does judge a book by a cover. And so if that's what you're going to be judged by, you want to have the best possible cover you can have. So you definitely want a professional book cover done. And that's really going to, help you stand out. And that's what you want to, again, keeping in mind that you're writing to market, you want to catch the eye of a very specific group of readers. And so it can't just be professional, it also has to be strategic. So what does being strategic mean, Haley?
I totally blanked, so I cannot remember.
That's okay. So again, thinking back to writing to market, so and having the right tropes, well, there's also certain tropes you're going to want to have on the cover of your book. And this is something that really stood out to us, and that Rami talked about, was he had what he thought was a really cool, awesome book cover, but his book just didn't sell. It was kind of, what would you say, kind of like artistic, and it was kind of very simple, and he writes urban fantasy, so it had like some kind of the world and like monsters on it or something. But it's mostly just like one color, and then it had like the actual design was kind of white, and it's very simple. And then he later created a new cover, and it had basically the picture of the hero in the front, and he found this out by, he researched what are all the top selling indie authors in my genre that I'm writing to, what do their covers have in common? And he like even down to like in the top left corner always tends to have this thing in it, and the in the foreground is this and the background is that. And so that's how he knew how to get a new cover created. And so when he did that, it totally changed his results, and he started getting a lot more sales. So you want your book to be strategic in that way. So another example would be Chris Fox. He talked about before he created his military sci-fi series, he did research on what do the covers of all the successful indie authors in this genre tend to have on their covers, and he found that they all tend to have a really cool looking spaceship on the front. And so he made sure that his cover would have a really cool spaceship on the cover of his book too. So that's what we're talking about with being strategic. So yes, it has to look really good, but then it also has to be something that's going to stand out and appeal to those specific readers that you're writing to.
I thought of another genre that has a very clear like book cover, and it's the Amish romance. Oh, yeah. Without fail, there's always some kind of either field, house, or wagon, and then a girl with the Amish look, almost without fail. Amish look, the bonnet, the Amish cap and the dress and everything.
Right. Yeah. So now you think about it, right? If you think about it, you'll see, oh yeah, all the books in that genre do tend to have that same cover, and you might think, well, that's boring. I want to do something different, and maybe that would work, but it could also just then be the readers that are looking for another book in that genre. They won't recognize your book as being for them, and they'll just skip over it for a cover that stands out.
I wanted to mention, like, to be honest, like now that I think about it, I do tend, like if I'm looking, just like if I'm at the library or scrolling for an ebook or an audiobook on a library app, I tend to look at the book cover to see if it looks interesting enough for me. Mm-hmm. And I actually specifically look at the fonts. The fonts matter too. Mm-hmm. The font and whatever the imagery is. And I'm like, or, ooh, this looks really interesting. Mm-hmm. And then I have to look at the back cover to see if it's it's compelling enough for me to actually borrow or commit some time to. So
Right. So obviously there's a lot more than just 3 steps that go into creating a successful book, but these are kind of like big picture. What are the key milestones you need to have down? And so, yeah, in summary, you want to write to market. You want to have a book that includes the tropes that are going to appeal to a specific genre of readers, especially in your first chapter, because on Amazon you can have it so people can look inside and read the first chapter so they can open it. You start reading the first chapter and they're like, oh yeah, this is my jam. This is the kind of book I like to read. Let me read it. And then, of course, you don't want to just write a book that is just like every other book in that genre. You do want to have a unique spin, a unique twist on it. So that's where writing a great book comes in. You just want to write a great book, make a unique twist. And this goes for music too. A lot of what we're sharing here actually goes for if you were going to publish a music album, you want to write that album to a very specific micro genre of listener. You want to have specific tropes, I guess, for lack of a better analog in music, but you want to have the right specific instruments or a certain beat or song structure that is going to appeal to those listeners so that you can stand out. Again, it's all the whole concept that we talked about in our first episode of you want to be a big fish in a small pond rather than a small fish in a big pond. And then also your look, right? This is the same thing with music as with a book. You want your album art to be really cool, really stand out to your listeners so they recognize that, hey, that's what I want to listen to. So it's really cool how there's a lot of crossover here, and that's why we were kind of wanting to call this the Creative Entrepreneur show, and not just for writing, because we know we have a lot of people in our audience who are interested in multiple forms of art, and we found that from both trying to grow our music career and our author career that there's a lot of similarities. And so
there's so many similarities.
So for both, those are kind of the 3 main things you want to do. So you want to figure out who's that ideal reader, right? Who's the person that's just going to gobble up your books and read all your books or listen to all your music. And then you want to make sure that you're creating something that appeals to them. Make sure that it's great, that it has the right tropes, while also including your own unique spin on those. And then, of course, having the actual packaging be such that it's going to draw the eye of that ideal reader. So that when your ideal reader sees it, they know that it's for them. So those are the 3 things you need to have in order to publish a book that you know is actually going to sell. And so with that, we can now move on to the question time. And just a reminder, again, none of this is possible if you don't actually get that book finished and you're not actually working on improving your art, improving your craft. So if you haven't already, be sure to grab our free guide at kingdompen.org, which is how to form that unbreakable writing habit and how to become an unstoppable writer. So definitely grab that. And there's so many great tips in there that works even if you're not a writer, really. It could work for if you're just wanting to form any kind of habit. It's really good.
Any kind of creative habit, actually.
Yeah. My sisters are the ones that mostly put that together. I contributed a small amount. It's mostly the 2 of them that put that together. When I read it, I was like, wow, like we could probably, charge for this because this is better than what you would get from like buying a lot of books on forming habits. And I've read a lot of books about habits and productivity and all that. And this guide, which is free, I think is better than like 99% of what's out there. So definitely go to kingdompen.org and grab that. Otherwise, we will answer any questions that you have now in the comments. So if you have a question about anything we said, we know it was kind of a lot. It might feel like drinking from a fire hose. So if you have any questions, definitely post those in the comments below. And if you're watching the replay of this, go ahead and post your questions as well, and we'll try and respond to them as we get to them.
Yes, because even if it's after the live is over, we definitely want to hear feedback and any questions. I did have a question. Would you say that these strategies could work for an artist, like someone who paints or draws or does digital art?
I would say, there's probably some, small details that are going to be unique to every form of art, but there's definitely, I think the big concepts would definitely still apply. So I'd have to look in like who's buying art, what kind of art are people buying? Because design is really big right now because people are needing, like if you look at Fiverr, like all the jobs, people are needing illustrations, they're needing logos, they're needing
covers.
book covers. Yeah, they need album covers. So I feel like maybe that's kind of where the art buying market is right now. But again, I'm not an expert. I don't know. I mean, then you have like fine art, right? Maybe people are having portraits done, but I'm not as I'm not really in the art scene, so I don't really know who's buying like big, paintings and things like that. But
Yeah, me either.
there's definitely a lot of people that need, you know, illustrations, designs of all kinds, and so you could definitely stand out from all the noise by niching down and focusing on, okay, for example, we create synthwave music. That's what we're kind of the genre of music we're moving into, and that has a very specific aesthetic. And so we might want to be looking for people who create synthwave art. And so if you like niche down into being someone who creates synthwave artwork, or does sci-fi illustrations or something, then that can help you stand out. And then from there, it's just making sure that you have really good artwork, and then you're just packaging it in a way so that your ideal customer can find you. So that kind of goes for just every business in general, even if you're not selling something that's an actual form of art. If you're selling like supplements, right, you would find out who is my ideal customer. You want to make sure you have a really good product, right? That's basically what we're talking about. Write a good book, right? Have a good music. You make sure the product's good. Make sure you're first finding who are the people that are going to be most likely to buy that. Put the great product in front of them, and then you package it in such a way so that your audience knows that it's for them. Your ideal customer knows that it's for them, and they don't just gloss over it. All right, well, it doesn't look like we have any questions, so we must have just blown everyone's minds away. So with that being said, thanks for attending. Let us know what other topics you'd like us to cover in future episodes. Otherwise, have a great day, and we'll see you in a future episode. Bye.
Bye.